When you look at the scope of cinema blockbusters today, it's vastly changed over the last 7 or so years. What used to be a level playing field for films as a whole has become diminished to just a few categories and genres. A lot of this has to do with the rising population of people like myself who would rather watch something at home than go to the movies. With the rise of companies like Netflix and Hulu, Hollywood has obviously had to make changes, going as big and grand as possible. One of these categories of film that enables them to do this is the mega superhero trope that leads the box office almost every time. Although the action genre, along with its various subgenres, have always had its hold in Hollywood, superhero films are the blockbuster megaseller right now. As all of Marvel's films have made anywhere from $2 million to $2 billion, it's no surprise that this has led to a pattern of numerous sequels, which can be seen from their competitor DC Studios as well. Ever since the release of The Avengers, earning $1.5 million worldwide, it has been a non-stop trope of sequels, prequels, and spin-offs, and it doesn't seem to be ending anytime soon. However, back in the late 90s and early 2000s, this was not necessarily the case. Sure, there were sequels, but it didn't go to the extreme multitude of films every year that's the case today. There was more room for other more standalone graphic novels to come to light. The focus on the studios back then didn't seem to be putting the same storyline or group of characters to a continuation, but rather to let comics and graphic novels that didn't share a Hollywood spotlight to emerge. Films like V for Vendetta, Sin City, and Ghost World all were unconventional and came from independent artists, and the films did the original content more than justice. Movies like The Crow and Blade were small graphic novels to start but rose to fame with their film releases. This made these films genuine and well done because time was put into it and it looked and felt real. I'm getting ahead of myself. What I really want to talk about today is a character that for a short time was the highlight of superhero films today. You guessed it. Spiderman, released in 2002, was a landmark first for Marvel films. It grossed $800 million, and compared to X-Men's $300 million and Blade's $131 million grosses, this was a first. It could undoubtedly be argued this paved the way for Marvel to become what it is. Directed by Sam Raimi, the films that spanned 5 years helped lead to both the brief rise and fall of superhero films, until getting revamped into the hellhole Marvel and DC have created for us. The Spider-Man period was almost a perfect one. What I want to argue today is that these three films are the all-time best in the Marvel series thus far, and also to analyze what they did for the film industry, both good and bad. Although in recent years Spider-Man has been run into the same Marvel string along, this was not always the case. Up until the release of Raimi's first Spider-Man in 2002, it was hard to properly bring Spider-Man to the screen, or any superhero for that matter. Although there have been plenty of Superman and Batman films done in the past, they didn't age well. In 1999, James Cameron and a few other authors wrote treatment to a potential film still under the rights of MGM at the time. This caused a stir and several directors were called to direct, including David Fincher and M. Night Shyamalan. However, Columbia Pictures eventually landed on Sam Raimi, who had directed the very successful Evil Dead series. He ended up being the perfect man for the role of director, even if it was a reach out of his comfort zone from his previous work. Tobey Maguire also seemed to be a perfect fit for Peter Parker's quirky character, along with Kate Winslet, James Franco, and even William Dafoe. This all made the first film seem almost surreal. It was a perfect setting for a great film to be made, and to exceed all expectations. Now, I don't think this was necessarily intentional of Hollywood, but I think picking the director who had done a trilogy like this was important. The two trilogies, Evil Dead and Spider-Man, directed by Sam Raimi, are very comparable. The first in the series for both seem very dark and almost horrifying. While the first Evil Dead lacks humor and is more horror-based, the first Spider-Man's antagonist is possibly the most menacing and terrifying of the series. The last in both the series were also what most people consider terrible, becoming almost a joke of itself and having way too much comedy. All the films also had plenty of Bruce Campbell as well. However, the two I want to talk about that are both arguably the best in their series are the second, both the first sequels in their franchise. What is usually a cash grab can become even better than its predecessor if the same amount of quality and effort can be translated to the second film. However, as we all know, this is rarely the case. It's hard to say why few other films have managed to pull this off, but for Evil Dead it was one word: camp. For those not familiar with camp, according to the Webster Dictionary, it's a style that's absurdly exaggerated, artificial, or affected in a usually humorous way. In the scene where Ash tries to catch his possessed and dismembered hand, this is a perfect example of camp. Horrifying and disturbing, yet so ridiculous and funny that you can't help but laugh. This is camp. This is most commonly used in horror films, particularly from Wes Craven in both Scream and Wes Craven's New Nightmare. Now, compare this to Spider-Man. Too many times throughout the film, we're left at the beginning of what seems to be a triumphing and heart-swooping scene that turns into a comedic disaster. Even in scenes of intensity and peril, Spidey still manages to pull off one-liners left and right, similar to what Bruce Campbell's character did in Evil Dead.
Pizza time.
Settings and situations are absurd as well. In Spider-Man 2, Aunt May struggles to hang on for dear life with her umbrella, only to discover she's inches from a brick. Later, she says another comical one-liner before bashing Doc Ock's head with the same umbrella. Sure, you could argue we've seen this tactic in plenty of the old Superman and Batman films, but this tone of the film was expected, normal. We weren't in a time period where we could make a film like Deadpool that made the concept of a superhero film comical. However, being a nerdy, smart aleck character, this quirky element worked well for Spider-Man. Spider-Man 3 is considered by most people as one of the most hated and worst Marvel films ever, and I'm not disagreeing. From Maguire's horrible acting to a messy plot with far too many antagonists, this is not a good film. The main reason for this being the overly large hand that went into creating this disaster. However, despite all this, it grossed almost $900 million and was the most financially successful film in the series. So, if it was such a horrible movie, why did it succeed? The answer is international sales. It's no secret our friends overseas, particularly in Asia, eat American blockbusters for breakfast. 70% of film revenue comes from overseas, and this was the ticket for Hollywood. Spider-Man 3 may have been one of the all-time worst films, but it paved the way for Hollywood to put out even more superhero films. And now, here we are. We live in a world where you see a trailer for the new Avengers or Thor movie, and a multitude of other Marvel films planned to be released in the coming years. What has been lost in this is quality storytelling, and a vision from a director, as was the case with Sam Raimi. Although in some cases with big budget films, directors get to take control of their vision, such as Nolan in the Dark Knight trilogy, this isn't usually the case. It's safe to say the world of superhero films hasn't gotten much better since Spider-Man 3, until we can get another director to make a carefully written, planned, and human superhero film. It will probably forever stay that way. So, do us all a favor, and support not a continuation of something we already have, but for something new and enlightened, even in the superhero genre.